All stories are dramatized recreations. Named locations are fictionalized. Any resemblance to real persons is coincidental.
Hi, I'm Olivia, a 37-year-old cleaner from Nye. Sharing this is hard, but I need to process how my husband Daniel's affair with our neighbor's wife shattered our 12-year marriage. It began when I found her earring, a tiny silver dove wedged between our couch cushions. Daniel swore it was from a work event, but the lie curdled in my stomach. I started noticing things: his phone always face down, late-night gym sessions, how he'd flinch if I touched his wedding band. The final blow came when our neighbor, Tom, thanked Daniel for comforting his wife during their rough patch, his eyes avoiding mine like I was made of glass. That's when I knew. 12 years of shared bills, Sunday pancakes, and holding hands through chemo for his mom, reduced to ash by a woman who borrowed my sugar. The silver dove felt cold against my palm, a dead weight. I'd found it while vacuuming, the metal catching light like a sneer. Daniel's gym bag sat by the door, zipper half open, smelling of synthetic sweat and lies. He'd been training 3 nights a week since June, always returning with damp hair and avoiding my eyes. I traced the dove's bent wing. Sarah's earring, Sarah from across the hall who hugged me at Christmas and brought soup when Daniel's mom died. Her laugh echoed in my head, too loud, too close, while I scrubbed toilets at the office tower downtown. I dropped the earring into his protein shaker. Let him choke on it. The apartment walls pressed in, photos of us in Montauk, grinning, sunburnt, stupid, now just painted liars. I opened his bag. Beneath sweaty clothes, a receipt from the Velvet Vine, that overpriced wine bar near Sarah's gallery. Dated, yesterday, 8:03 p.m. 2 glasses of Malbec. Daniel hated Malbec. My fingers brushed something velvet. A necklace box. Inside, not jewelry, but a key brass, unmarked. Our building uses fobs. Sarah's studio had old locks, the kind you'd whisper through at midnight. The air thinned. 12 years. 12 years of me wiping his coffee spills, stitching his torn work shirts, sitting silent through his mother's funeral while he sobbed into my shoulder. All while Sarah's perfume, jasmine, and betrayal hung in our hallway. I texted him, forgot my keys. Meet at Tom's? Need to discuss Mom's headstone. Tom, her husband. My stomach lurched. Daniel replied fast, stuck at work. Try later? A lie. Tom's car was in the lot. I'd seen it polishing rain off its hood this morning. I pocketed the key. Rain smeared the bus window as I rode toward Sarah's gallery. My uniform clung, bleach spots blooming like mold. I imagined Daniel's hands on her waist, those same hands that changed our wedding tires in a blizzard, pushing her against some canvas-strewn wall. Would he whisper, "I love you"? Or just grunt, efficient? The gallery glowed ahead, all soft lights and arrogance. Through the glass, Sarah arranging lilies, hips swaying to silent music. Daniel's umbrella, our umbrella, navy with yellow ducks, leaned against her desk. I crossed the street. The key burned in my pocket. Proof. I needed proof, not just this acid in my throat. The alley behind her studio smelled of rotting roses. Her back door painted teal, chipped. The brass key slid in. Smooth, silent. Inside, dust danced in projector light. Canvases stared, fractured faces, screaming mouths. And there, on a chaise lounge, Daniel's watch. The one I'd saved 6 months to buy, now discarded like trash beside a rumpled silk scarf. Sarah's scarf. I picked up the watch. The glass was smudged, lipstick, raspberry red. Sarah's shade. My thumb rubbed the stain. It wouldn't fade, like this moment, seared into bone. A receipt fluttered from the watchband, the Velvet Vine. 8T15, 2X Malbec, room 3, upstairs, room 3, upstairs. Where artists networked. I'd vacuumed wine spills there last Tuesday. Found a man's cufflink. Silver, duck-shaped. Daniel's voice sliced the silence. Liv? What? He stood in the doorway, tie undone, hair finger combed. Panic flashed in his eyes, quick, then gone. Tom said you were looking for me? Sarah appeared behind him, lips tight. Olivia, her voice honey-coated. We were just networking, I finished. The watch weighed my hand down. You left your ducks behind, Daniel. He stepped forward. It's not what, don't. I dropped the watch. It clattered on concrete, a dead thing. 12 years. And you picked her doorstep to piss on. Sarah touched his arm. Protective. Let's talk inside, I laughed. A raw, ugly sound. No. You two keep networking. I walked past them, rain needling my face. Daniel didn't follow. The umbrella stayed with her. The key scratched the lock, a sound like dry bone on stone, before the door swung open into darkness that smelled of stale coffee and the ghost of Daniel's cedar cologne. 12 years of shared air now tasted of abandoned promises. My fingers brushed the light switch, the plastic cool and unreceptive until the bulb flickered awake, casting long shadows from the half-packed suitcase gaping open on our bed like a wound. His suitcase. The one I'd bought him for our anniversary, leather-worn smooth at the corners from imaginary business trips that now reeked of Sarah's jasmine perfume. I traced the edge of the kitchen counter formica chipped near the sink where he'd once dropped a skillet, laughing as grease splattered the ceiling. Now just another fracture in our history. The silence wasn't empty, it vibrated with the echo of his last words. You're overreacting, Liv. She's just a friend. Lies had texture here. They clung to the curtains I'd hung last spring, their floral patterns suddenly grotesque, petals morphing into watching eyes. Outside, Queens pulsed car horns, distant sirens, but our apartment felt vacuum-sealed, sterile. A white envelope lay propped against the fruit bowl, management office stamped in rigid black letters. Inside, words that turned my ribs to ice. Failure to remit payment, 72-hour notice to vacate, the rent check. Daniel always handled it. My job, sweetheart, his thumb brushing my wrist. Now the numbers blurred, ink bleeding into the paper grain. My janitor salary couldn't cover this. Not alone. The eviction notice crinkled in my grip, sharp edges biting into my palm as I pictured Sarah's gallery, polished floors, champagne flutes gleaming under track lights, while I scraped gum off office building tiles. Rain blurred the bus window next morning, each droplet warping the passing bodegas and laundromats into liquid smears. Mrs. Rossi from 4B turned away when I boarded, clutching her purse tighter. Had he told them first? The stale air smelled of wet wool and avoidance. At work, Brenda's voice cut through the locker room's damp heat. Olivia. My office. Now. Her linoleum floor gleamed under fluorescent bars, reflecting my worn sneakers as she slid a printed sheet across the desk incident report. Theft reported in executive washroom, security footage, reviewed, my stomach dropped. Tuesday, 10:04 p.m. The night Daniel swore he was working late, the same night I'd found Sarah's scarf tangled in our bedsheets. Cash missing from the amenity fund locker, Brenda stated, eyes avoiding mine. Camera shows you last entering. Alone. The accusation hung thick, a physical weight compressing my lungs. I remembered the extra hour I'd worked, scrubbing vomit from stall partitions. While Daniel's phone buzzed in my pocket, Sarah's name flashing like a neon sign. Had he planted this? They'll search your locker, she added, voice stripped of warmth. Pending investigation, administrative leave. The words without pay hissed in the silence. My uniform scratched my neck, bleach fumes suddenly suffocating. Outside, the skyline dissolved into gray slurry. No home, no income. Daniel's betrayal wasn't just in Sarah's bed, it was in this meticulously laid trap, each component snapping shut, the unpaid rent, the stolen cash, the neighbor's averted eyes. Survival instinct flared, cold, sharp beneath the grief. I pictured Tom's smirk when he'd seen me crying in the stairwell yesterday. Did he know? Did they all? The walk home was a gauntlet. Rain soaked through my jacket, plastering hair to my cheeks as I passed the velvet vine. Through steamed glass, Daniel's silhouette leaned across a booth toward a woman whose laugh carried through the door crack. Not Sarah. Someone new? My hands fisted. 12 years of his mother's chemotherapy appointments, of warming his dinner at midnight, of stitching the torn elbow of his favorite shirt, now reduced to this, a key trembling in my hand before a locked door that might soon be someone else's. I knelt by our bed, pulling out the dusty fireproof box where we kept birth certificates, marriage papers. The lock clicked open. Beneath documents, a Polaroid surfaced, us at Coney Island, cotton candy staining our lips pink. Daniel's arm around me, genuine. Before the galleries, the Malbecs, the lies. A brittle sound escaped me, not a sob, but the crack of something internal fracturing. The photo joined the eviction notice on the floor. Two pieces of evidence. One of love murdered. The other of a life dismantled. Midnight wax fumes coated my tongue. Sweet, chemical, a familiar armor against the silence of the 42nd floor executive suite. My mop bucket's wheels squeaked like trapped mice on marble, the sound echoing in the cavernous dark where glass walls reflected 1,000 distorted Olivias. Hunched shoulders in a stained blue uniform, hands raw from ammonia, eyes scanning not for dirt, but for digital ghosts. Daniel thought he'd buried me with that theft accusation, left me jobless and scrambling. He forgot I knew these corridors. Every supply closet, every unsecured terminal left blinking in an empty office. Forgotten passwords taped under keyboards. Routers humming behind potted ferns. My keycard, revoked by Brenda, still opened the custodial server room, a glitch in the building's digital spine I'd found years ago, back when Daniel joked about my spy games during overtime. Tonight's target, Martin and Crouch, LP. Daniel's new lawyers. Their mahogany doors gleamed under my headlamp, smelling of lemon oil and privilege. Inside, the air hung thick with the residue of expensive cigars and lies. My fingertips traced the cold edge of partner Miles, Donovan's desk, polished to a mirror finish, reflecting my hollowed cheeks. His trash bin overflowed, crumpled legal pads, Starbucks sleeves, and there, a torn FedEx slip. Sender, D. Wright. Our joint savings account he'd drained. Recipient, S. Archer Gallery. Sarah's vanity project. The paper crackled like dry bone as I smoothed it flat. The date was yesterday, hours after Brenda suspended me. He's paying her with our money. Our Montauk fund. A sound elevator chime, distant. I froze, breath-catching. Footsteps echoed down the hall, sharp, impatient. Donovan? Security? My headlamp clicked off. Darkness swallowed me whole. The only light, the green pulse of a network switch under his desk. The footsteps paused outside the door. A key jingled. Think. Supply closet. 3 steps left. Handle sticks in damp weather. My muscles coiled, not fear, but calculation honed by years of navigating hostile spaces unseen. The door handle rattled. Click. The lock held. A frustrated sigh. Damn thing. A man's voice, not Donovan. Younger, janitorial. I waited until the footsteps receded toward the break room, then slipped from behind the desk, FedEx slip tucked into my sleeve like a shiv. Back in the server room cramped, buzzing with server fans like angry hornets, I plugged the USB drive scavenged from Brenda's e-waste bin into a terminal. The login screen glowed, password. I typed the sequence taped under Donovan's keyboard weeks ago while polishing his brass nameplate, Legacy 42. Access granted. Emails scrolled, cold, clinical. Right versus right. Asset liquidation. Motion to quash subpoena Ray. Banking records. Consultation notes, client DA, expressed concern Ray, spouse's instability and documented theft. Each word was a scalpel. He wasn't just leaving, he was erasing me, framing me, turning our shared life into courtroom ammunition. My knuckles whitened on the mouse. Then, a thread, property transfer, 17 Elm St Est, our apartment building. Proceeding with expedited sale per client instructions, tenant eviction notices served, signed Miles Donovan. The server hummed. Outside, Manhattan glittered, a galaxy of indifference. I remembered Donovan's face at Tom's summer BBQ last year, how he'd clapped Daniel on the back, called him a survivor after his mom died. Survivor. The word tasted like bile. I copied everything. Emails, PDFs, calendar invites onto the drive. The USB warmed in my palm, heavy with betrayal. Exiting the elevator into the pre-dawn lobby, I collided with a wall of damp wool and aftershave. Donovan. His Burberry trench dripped onto the marble. Ms. Wright? His eyes pale, assessing, flickered over my uniform, the bucket. Working late or early? A smile played on his lips, devoid of warmth. Ugh. Just finishing, Mr. Inaction, Mr. Friend Open Problem and Fact. Donovan. My voice sounded steady, alien. He stepped closer, the scent of single malt scotch faint on his breath. Heard about your difficulties? Daniel's heartbroken. His gaze dropped to my left hand, bare now. Such a shame. A woman in your position, alone. Vulnerable. The threat hung, velvet-wrapped. Your position. Janitor. Evictee. Accused thief. I hefted the mop bucket. Water sloshed, gray with the grime of his building. Vulnerable? The word felt strange, almost funny. I know where the bodies are buried here, Mr. Donovan, and I know how to dig. His smile froze. I pushed past him, the bucket's wheels shrieking across the lobby like a battle cry. Outside, the first garbage truck groaned down Fifth Ave. I pulled the FedEx slip from my sleeve. S. Archer Gallery, Sarah's Empire, funded by my sweat. By every toilet scrubbed, every floor buffed. The USB drive burned in my pocket. Armor. Weapon. Ledger of sins, let them come. The room above Golden Dragon smelled of stale fry oil and desperation, thick enough to coat the throat. Rain lashed the single window overlooking the alley dumpster, its rhythmic patter drowned by the clatter of walks below. My bed was a foam pad on warped floorboards, the USB drive, warm against my chest where it hung on a string beneath the cleaner's uniform I couldn't afford to replace. Proof, poison, protection, Donovan's parting shot, vulnerable, echoed in the hiss of the radiator pipe. He knew where I lived now. The eviction notice was a crumpled origami crane on the lone chair. A knock shattered the greasy quiet. 3 precise raps, wood vibrating under knuckles accustomed to mahogany. Not the landlord. His fist was meaty, impatient. This was surgical. My pulse hammered against the USB's hard edge. Through the peephole, Donovan blurred by fisheye glass, trench collar turned up against the drizzle, a brown paper bag in hand. Absurdly domestic. Terrifying. I opened the door a crack, chain taut. Lost, Mr. Donovan? He offered the bag. Steam escaped, carrying the incongruous scent of real coffee dark roast, no cheap grounds. Peace offering. His smile didn't touch his eyes, pale as river ice. May I? A gesture passed me into the squalor. The chain felt flimsy as spider silk. Inside, he moved like a curator assessing a ruin. His gaze snagged on the eviction notice, the damp patch blooming on the ceiling, the single suitcase spewing threadbare sweaters. No chair offered, he remained standing, water dripping from his Burberry onto the stained linoleum. He placed the coffee cup on the windowsill beside a dead fly. We need to talk, Olivia. About Daniel. He unbuttoned his coat, revealing a cashmere sweater the color of bank vaults. He's escalating. Filed for sole custody of your niece today. The air vanished. My ribs were splintering glass. Maya. My sister's ghost child, her leukemia-stolen life leaving only that fragile 8-year-old with her mother's eyes. Daniel knew Maya was my last tether to anything soft. He can't. He did. Donovan pulled a folded legal bulletin from his inner pocket. In re-guardianship of MR, my knees buckled. I gripped the windowsill, the cold seeping into bone. Below, a delivery driver cursed in Mandarin, his cartwheel scraping concrete. His petition cites unstable environments and financial irresponsibility. Donovan's voice was smooth, clinical. Points to your eviction and Brenda's theft investigation. He paused, letting the implication hang. I know you took those files. He wants Maya moved to his mother's estate. Upstate. Away from this. A sweep of his hand encompassed the room, the alley stench, the muffled shouts from the kitchen vents. Anger, cold and precise, replaced the panic. You're his lawyer. Was. He met my gaze. I withdrew representation this morning. Conflict of interest. The radiator hissed. Rain blurred the neon dragon sign across the alley, casting bloody light on his face. Why? A flicker something raw beneath the polished veneer. He traced a water ring on the sill with a manicured finger. Daniel and I go back further than you know. We represented opposing sides in the clean right class action. 10 years ago. Memory ignited, newspaper headlines about exploited janitors. My old supervisor, Mrs. Gable, weeping over lost pension checks. Daniel, fresh out of law school, buzzing about his big win for the corporate landlords who owned Clean Right. His victory meant her destitution. You represented the slumlords, I breathed. He crushed people like me for them, and I helped the workers sue. Donovan's jaw tightened. Daniel's tactics back then. Forged timesheets, coerced witness statements. Sound familiar? He nodded at the USB bulge beneath my shirt. He hasn't changed, just his targets have. The SEB dug into my sternum. My trust was a shattered vase, shards embedded deep. Why tell me this? Was this another trap? A play for the files? His proximity felt suddenly dangerous, cedar cologne masking something sharper, predatory. I scanned him, the flawless watch, Patek Philippe, not Daniel's duck-engraved cheapness, the lack of a wedding band, the calculated empathy in his eyes. Red flag. Red flag. Red flag. He stepped closer. The scent of expensive coffee warred with alley rot. I can help you, Olivia. Not as a lawyer, but as someone who knows exactly what Daniel is capable of. His hand hovered near my arm, not touching, but the intention vibrated in the air. Let me, I flinched back, shoulder hitting the damp wall. Help? The word tasted metallic. Like you helped Mrs. Gable? She died in a shelter, Mr. Donovan. Your victory bought her what? A nicer obituary? He froze. For a heartbeat, the polished mask slipped, revealing something weary, haunted. Gable, he exhaled, fogging the rain-streaked glass. That case? It cost me things too. He didn't elaborate. The silence screamed with unspoken losses. Partnerships? Morals? A soul? He retrieved the coffee untouched. Think about it, he's coming for Maya. For everything. At the door, he paused. That UCB? It's a grenade. Pull the pin carefully, or it blows back on you. His gaze lingered on the eviction notice. Golden Dragon closes at 11. The alley gets dark. The door clicked shut. His footsteps faded down the stairs. I slid down the wall, the cold linoleum biting through my uniform. The USB was a live wire against my skin. Donovan's confession swirled. Daniel's past sins, his own shadowed motives. Help or manipulation. The lines blurred like the neon dragon in the rain. Maya's face flashed in my mind, her laugh echoing in my sister's empty house. Daniel wasn't just stealing my past. He was coming for my future. My last light. I curled my fingers around the USB. Grenade or lifeline? Either way, the pin was loose. The SEB drive pulsed against my sternum like a second, colder heart as I pushed open the heavy door of the Queen's Public Library, a fortress of hush and dust motes dancing in shafts of watery morning light. The air here smelled of aging paper, floor wax, and the faint, metallic tang of communal desperation from the rows of public computers humming near periodicals. My cleaner's uniform felt like a disguise, too loud in this temple of quiet contemplation. I bypassed the vigilant librarian's desk, her gaze sharp as a shiv behind bifocals, and slid into the farthest terminal carrel, its plastic seat cracked and unforgiving. The monitor flickered to life, casting a sickly blue glow on my chapped hands. Donovan's warning grenade echoed with every ragged breath. Maya's face, pale and wide-eyed the last time I'd tucked her into my sister's old bed, flashed behind my eyelids. Daniel wasn't just playing for money or pride now, he was playing for her. Plugging in the drive felt like arming a bomb. The folder bloomed on screen, write assets. Cold, precise file names mocked me. Property transfer 7tl.pdf, bank record siphoned.xlsx, custody petition mdar pdf. I opened the custody document first. Daniel's accusations glared in Times New Roman. Unfit environment characterized by financial instability and documented workplace misconduct. He'd cited Brenda's suspension notice, attaching a grainy still from the executive washroom security feed me, blurry and alone near the amenity fund locker. Time-stamped minutes before the theft was reported. My fingers trembled over the keyboard. He staged it. The realization wasn't a shock, but a confirmation that sank into my bones like winter frost. He'd positioned me perfectly, knowing my schedule, my habits, my blind trust. Then, the bank records. Columns of numbers blurred. Transfers flagged for consulting fees to S. Archer Gallery, $500 here, $1 there, draining our joint savings over months. The Montauk Fund, our dream cottage by the sea, reduced to zero. But deeper, nestled in a subfolder cryptically named Legacy Holdings, was the Venom, Life Insurance Policy Beneficiary Change.pdf. My name, meticulously crossed out. Sarah Archer's looping signature filled the beneficiary line. Dated 3 weeks ago. The air in the carol thickened, tasting of ozone and betrayal. He hadn't just planned to leave me destitute. He'd planned for me to vanish. Permanently. The screen swam. I gripped the edge of the desk, the cheap particle board digging into my palms, grounding me against the vertigo. Maya. Focus on Maya. A shadow fell across the monitor. I slammed the laptop lid shut, heart hammering against my ribs. A man leaned against the adjacent Carol late 50s, rumpled suit, eyes like chips of flint behind wire-rimmed glasses. He held a weathered copy of the New York Review of Books, but his attention was fixed on me. Rough morning? His voice was a low rasp, like gravel under tires. I forced my hand away from the closed laptop. Just research. Looks heavier than research. He nodded slightly toward the USB cable snaking from my bag. Legal trouble has a certain weight. Seen it before. He didn't move closer, but his presence filled the narrow space, an intrusion both unsettling and deliberate. Name's Frank. Used to work fraud division. Nifty. He tapped the book's spine. Retired. Mostly. Suspicion coiled tight. Daniel setting another trap? Donovan testing me? Not interested, I muttered, gathering my bag. Right? Olivia, right? Frank's words stopped me cold. He pulled a folded clipping from his book, a faded society page photo from a charity gala last year. Daniel, beaming in a tux, arm around a much younger Sarah Archer. Me, blurred in the background, holding coats. Saw your picture. Read about the eviction notice pinned to your old building's lobby. Recognized him. He jerked his chin toward Daniel's smirking face in the photo. Worked a case tangentially involving his firm a while back. Martin and Crouch. Nasty business with a developer. Forged land surveys, coerced signatures, tactics that left folks homeless. He met my gaze, flinty eyes sharp. Heard he's gunning for custody of a kid now? Your niece? The library's quiet pressed in, suddenly suffocating. How did he know that? The custody filing was hours old. Paranoia flared. Who sent you? Frank chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Sent? Honey, I haunt these stacks. Bad men leave trails. I follow them. He unfolded the clipping further, revealing a handwritten note scrawled in the margin, DW&SA, Velvet Vine, Room 3, Weekly. Paid via Shellcore, Legacy Holdings. Your husband's not subtle. Just thinks no one's looking. He tapped the note. Room 3, sound familiar? It did. The receipt I'd found in Sarah's studio. Room 3. My proof, but Frank had more. Connections. Knowledge of Daniel's past methods. A lifeline? Or a more sophisticated snare? Trust was a luxury I couldn't afford, yet Maya's time was running out. The USB drive felt like a stone in my bag. Frank watched me, waiting, an old predator offering an alliance I couldn't yet decipher. The grenade Donovan mentioned wasn't just in my hand anymore, its pin was being pulled by forces I barely understood. I looked at Frank's weathered face, then back at the closed laptop holding Daniel's meticulously crafted destruction. Room 3, I repeated, my voice barely a whisper in the library's hush. What else do you know? Frank's flint chip eyes held mine, the library's fluorescent hum suddenly deafening. Legacy Holdings, the Shellcorp name from Daniel's bank transfers. The cold plastic of the Carol seat seeped through my uniform, grounding me against the vertigo of his knowledge. How deep did this rabbit hole go? And why was a retired fraud cop rooting through Daniel's dirty laundry in the Queen stacks? Suspicion warred with a desperate, clawing hope. Maya's space, her small hand clutching mine at the hospital after chemo, whispering, "Don't go, Aunt Liv," flickered in my mind. Daniel wasn't just stealing money, he was stealing her future. My last tether. Legacy Holdings, I said, the name tasting like ash. He used it to funnel money to her. The gallery. I kept my voice low, barely a vibration in the hushed air. What do you know about it? Frank unfolded the clipping fully, revealing a grainy photocopy stapled to the back. A corporate registry document. Legacy Holdings, LC. Registered in Delaware, paper address leads to a mailbox store in Newark. His finger, calloused and ink-stained, tapped a name listed as Manager Thomas R. Archer. Sarah's husband. The air left my lungs. Tom, the neighbor who'd thanked Daniel for comforting Sarah. Had he known? Or was he just another pawn? Tom Archer, I breathed. He's her husband. Frank's lips thinned. Husband, beard, or mark? Hard to say, but he signed the docs. He leaned closer, the scent of pipe tobacco and old wool cutting through the library's dust. Your husband's clever. Layers. He doesn't pay Sarah directly. He pays Legacy for consulting. Invoices I found look like gibberish. Brand synergy analysis. Market penetration strategy, he snorted softly. Money goes in, gets shuffled, then flows out to Sarah's personal account, laundered clean as fresh snow. Neat. Almost. He pointed to a string of numbers on the registry copy, bank routing details. Almost, he repeated. Because he got greedy. He pulled a small notepad from his jacket pocket, flipped pages filled with cramped handwriting. 6 months ago, Legacy started paying a second company, Metro Property Solutions, modest sums, or $800 there, for facility management. Frank's gaze locked onto mine. Metro Property Solutions owns your apartment building, Olivia. And guess who signed the lease renewal for Metro last year? Your husband. Power of attorney clause buried on page 17. He tapped the notepad. He wasn't just stealing your money. He was skimming the building's operating cash, rent payments meant for repairs, taxes, pocketing it through Legacy and Metro. That's why the roof leaks, the boiler's dying, and you got an eviction notice. He bled the place dry. The revelation hit like a physical blow, the endless maintenance requests ignored. Mrs. Rossi's flooded bathroom last winter, the flickering hallway lights. All while Daniel complained about rising costs. The USB drive felt like a block of ice against my chest. My proof was just the tip of the iceberg. Frank had the depth charges. Why? The words scraped my throat raw. Why tell me this? Frank closed the notepad, the sound sharp in the quiet. Daniel Wright ruined my last case. 5 years back, a nursing home chain, Bright Horizons. Elderly folks being neglected, funds embezzled. I had evidence linking Shellcore, money trails, then Daniel represented the owners. Got key witnesses to recant. Undue pressure, he claimed I applied. Internal affairs got involved. Case collapsed. I retired. He looked away, towards the towering shelves of forgotten books. Not by choice. He cost me my badge. My purpose. His gaze snapped back, fierce. He's using the same playbook on you. Discredit, isolate, destroy. He thinks he's untouchable. He nodded at my bag. That UZB? It's good. Shows the affair, the money siphoned to Sarah. Embarrassing, but it doesn't prove fraud. Doesn't prove he engineered your eviction by robbing the building. Doesn't prove he framed you for theft at work to cripple you financially before the custody fight. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a gravelly whisper. I want him broken. Not embarrassed. Broken. For Bright Horizons. For you. For that little girl. He paused, letting the gravity settle. But I need access. Your eyes and ears inside his world. His habits. His digital footprints. Things a janitor sees. Things a cop can't reach anymore. The proposition hung in the dusty air. An alliance with a ghost. Trusting a stranger whose own vendetta was his compass. My internal alarms screamed. Red flag. Trap, manipulation. But Maya's face, pale, scared in the sterile light of her mother's empty room, overrode them. Daniel had lawyers, money, lies. I had bleach-stained hands and a USB drive full of poison. Frank offered a detonator. What do you need? My voice was steadier than I felt. Frank slid the notepad across the Carroll desk. On a fresh page, he'd written, server room access. Donovan's calendar. Daniel's burner phone patterns. He's meticulous, but arrogant. He keeps backups, offline. Donovan's old firm, Martin & Crouch, uses physical server logs for high-stakes cases, handwritten sign-in sheets for the secure archive room. Find them, dates, times, names. See if Daniel visited after I retired. He tapped the last item. And the burner, he'll have one. For Sarah. For dirty work. Track its signal, public Wi-Fi spots he favors. Times. Correlate it with Sarah's movements, Donovan's. He stood, tucking the society clipping back into his book. Don't contact me. I'll find you. Golden Dragon Alley. After dark. Watch your back, Olivia. He knows you're cornered. Cornered animals are dangerous. He turned, melting into the labyrinth of bookshelves like smoke. I stared at the notepad. His handwriting was precise, demanding. A roadmap to ruin. The USB drive suddenly felt insufficient, naive. Frank wanted blood. Maya needed safety. And Daniel? He thought I was scrubbing floors in the dark. He didn't know about the ghosts in his machine, the old cop haunting his past, and the cleaner who knew where the bodies were buried. I picked up the notepad. The paper felt cold, heavy with consequence. The pin wasn't just loose anymore. The grenade was primed. And my hands were on the trigger. The Martin and Crouch archives smelled of forgotten lawsuits and slow decay, damp concrete, brittle paper, and the sharp tang of ozone from flickering fluorescents. My keycard, scavenged from Brenda's discarded lanyard in the e-waste bin, slid into the reader with a reluctant chunk. Frank's list burned in my memory, server logs, archive sign-in sheets. Burner patterns. Daniel's arrogance was his flaw. He thought digital trails were the only ones that mattered. He forgot about paper. About janitors who knew which floorboards creaked under the third filing cabinet from the left. Midnight silence pressed down, broken only by the gurgle of pipes behind walls and the frantic drum of my own pulse. My headlamp carved a narrow tunnel through the gloom, illuminating rows of steel shelves stacked with bankers' boxes labeled in fading ink: Tax Evasion 0812, IP Theft, Viridian Tech, Bright Horizons. Frank's case. The box was heavier than the others, dust thick as felt under my fingers. Inside, not just files, but a ledger-thick, leather-bound, smelling of mildew and old coffee. The physical server access log. I flipped pages, the paper crackling like dry skin. Dates blurred past. Then, a familiar scrawl. All Daniel's aggressive slant, the looping deed he'd never changed since college. Entries clustered around key dates. The week before my eviction notice, the day Brenda suspended me, yesterday, hours after he'd filed for custody of Maya. Purposeful visits, not for active cases but for the archives. For the boxes labeled property holdings and personnel records, clean right. He wasn't just covering tracks, he was planting seeds. My personnel file would be fattened with whispers of instability, property records doctored to show neglect he could pin on me. Evidence fabricated on paper, untouchable by digital forensics. A faint scritch echoed from the corridor. Not pipes. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Panic iced my veins. Brenda? Security? Donovan? I snapped the ledger shut, plunging the aisle into near darkness, heart hammering against my ribs. The footsteps paused outside the heavy metal door. A key rattled in the lock. Think. Fire exit. Behind the HVAC unit. Floor access panel loose. I slid the ledger back into the Bright Horizons box, shoved it deep into the shadows, and melted behind a towering stack of obsolete deposition transcripts as the door groaned open. A slice of hallway light cut across the concrete floor. A figure stood silhouetted, tall, broad-shouldered, carrying a compact flashlight, not the standard-issue security baton. Not security. The beam swept the aisles, methodical, professional. Frank? Had he followed me? Or was this Daniel's cleaner, sent to erase the ledger? The light danced closer, glinting off the steel shelves inches from my hiding spot. I held my breath, the taste of dust and fear thick on my tongue. The beam lingered on the disturbed dust near the Bright Horizons box. A low grunt. The figure moved toward it. My hand closed around a loose bolt from a shelf bracket. Cold, heavy, useless. The figure knelt, pulling the box out. The ledger's leather spine gleamed in his flashlight beam. He flipped it open, pages rustling. His profile emerged in the dim backglow, strong jaw, close-cropped salt and pepper hair, a faint scar bisecting his left eyebrow. Not Frank. Older, harder. He scanned Daniel's entries, his expression unreadable. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled out a phone, not a burner, a sleek, modern thing, and snapped pictures. Page after page, methodical, efficient. Who was he? Ally? Enemy? Another ghost in Daniel's machine? He closed the ledger, replaced it precisely, and stood. His flashlight beam swept the aisle again, passing over my hiding place without pause. Had he seen me, or chosen not to? He turned, walked back to the door, and paused. From his pocket, he pulled a small white envelope. Not sealed. He slid it onto the nearest shelf, a box labeled Divorce Settlements, Volume. Ix then vanished, closing the door softly behind him. The silence rushed back, louder than before. I waited minutes, ears straining, before emerging. The envelope was crisp, unmarked. Inside, a single sheet of expensive linen paper. No signature, just a typed message: he knows about the UZB. Donovan talks too much when he drinks. The custody hearing is moved to Friday. 9 a.m. Family Court, room 412, he's bringing witnesses. Brenda. Tom Archer, they'll say you're unstable. Asif. Unfit, burn the ledger, they'll come for it tomorrow. Sit, Sarah. The loopings matched, the beneficiary form. Why? Guilt? Fear? A trap within a trap? The paper trembled in my hand. Friday, 2 days. Daniel had accelerated his endgame, tightening the noose. Brenda's false testimony. Tom's complicity or ignorance weaponized against me. And Sarah, warning me? Or luring me into destroying evidence Frank needed. The ledger felt like radioactive lead. Burn it? Or let Daniel's henchmen find it. Frank's words echoed, I need access. Or eyes and ears. Sarah's warning changed nothing. It only confirmed the ledger's power. I couldn't burn it, not yet. I pulled out my phone, the cheap, pay-as-you-go burner Frank had insisted on. No signal down here. But I had what I needed: dates, times, names from the sign-in sheets. Daniel's pattern, his arrogance documented in ink. I took pictures of Sarah's note, the ledger's crucial pages, the empty envelope. Evidence layered upon evidence. The fire exit stairs were colder, the air smelling of wet brick and exhaust. Outside, rain slicked the alley asphalt. I clutched the burner phone, Sarah's warning a cold stone in my gut. Friday, room 4T2. Daniel wasn't just coming for Maya. He was coming to erase me. But he didn't know about the ledger. He didn't know about the ghost with the scar. And he didn't know the cleaner had stopped scrubbing floors and started reading his mail. The grenade wasn't just primed. The timer was ticking. Rain drummed a frantic rhythm against the Golden Dragon's dumpster lid, the alley's stench of rotting noodles and wet cardboard thick enough to choke on. Frank materialized from the shadows near the overflowing bins like a specter conjured by the downpour, his trench coat dark with moisture. He didn't speak, just extended a calloused hand, palm up, expectant. The manila envelope felt slick and heavy in my own damp grip, swollen with the weight of the evidence I'd risked everything for. Photos of the ledger pages, Sarah's chilling note, the damning sign-in sheets showing Daniel's calculated visits to plant evidence against me. Did you find it? Frank's voice was a low rasp, barely audible over the rain hitting metal. The burner pattern. I pulled out a single sheet from the envelope. A grid of dates, times, and locations scrawled in my own jagged handwriting. Public Wi-Fi, I said, water dripping from my hood into my eyes. Always near Sarah's gallery or high-end hotels. Short bursts. Consistent. Tuesdays and Fridays, 3 p.m. Like clockwork, I pointed to a cluster near the plaza. This one's new, started last week. Frank studied the grid under the dim, flickering light of a distant security lamp. A muscle ticked in his jaw. Good. Pattern establishes contact. Now we need content. He folded the paper, tucking it into his inner pocket with the reverence of a holy relic. The ledger photos? Sarah's note? I handed over the rest. He flipped through the images swiftly, his expression unreadable in the gloom. When he reached the photo of Sarah's typed warning, he paused. His finger traced the line, Donovan talks too much when he drinks. Donovan, Frank murmured, the name hanging like smoke in the wet air. He's the leak? Or he's being played? I countered. The paranoia Sarah had planted now a thorny vine in my mind. Daniel could be feeding him false info, testing loyalty, setting him up too. Frank's gaze snapped to mine, sharp and assessing. Possible. Donovan's got his own skeletons. But this, he tapped Sarah's note, feels personal. Panicked, she's scared. Of Daniel? Or of what we might expose. He folded the note carefully. Either way, it confirms the ledger's live ammunition. And the custody hearings moved. Friday, 9 a.m. The deadline hit like a physical blow. 72 hours. What now? The ledger's still in the archive. Sarah said they'd come for it. Let them, Frank said, a grim satisfaction in his tone. We need to see who comes. And what they take. Or plant. He pulled a small, nondescript device from his pocket, a key fob with a single, recessed button. Motion sensor. Stick it inside the Bright Horizons box, deep under the files. If the ledger moves, I'll know. He pressed it into my palm. The plastic was cold. Do it tonight, before the cleaners cycle through. The weight of the fob felt like a detonator. Going back into that lion's den, and the hearing? Daniel's bringing Brenda. Tom Archer. They'll bury me. Frank's eyes hardened. Then, we bury him first. Publicly. He pulled out another slip of paper, a list of names and numbers. These are reporters. Investigative journos. Hungry ones. They've been sniffing around Daniel's property deals for months. Metro Property Solutions stinks. Give them the Shell Corp trail. The embezzlement from your building's operating fund. The doctored records in the archive. Leak it. Tonight, anonymously, from a library terminal. He was asking me to light the fuse. To unleash a storm that could blow back on me just as easily. What about Maya? If this blows up before Friday, if it blows up during the hearing, Frank cut in, his voice steel, it destroys Daniel's credibility instantly. A judge won't grant custody to a man exposed for fraud and witness tampering mid-trial. It's the only play. He leaned closer, the scent of wet wool and old tobacco sharp. He thinks you're hiding. Scared. He doesn't expect you to strike first. From the shadows. Like a cleaner who knows where the real dirt hides. He was right. Daniel saw me as the victim, the obstacle to be removed. Not the threat. The USB drive had been a scalpel. Frank's plan was a sledgehammer. All right, I breathed, the word lost in the drumming rain. I leak it, tonight. Frank nodded, a ghost of approval in his eyes. Good. Focus on Metro. The money trail from the tenants to legacy to Sarah. The forged maintenance reports. The archive tampering. Make it undeniable. Let the journos connect the dots to Daniel. He turned to leave, melting back toward the deeper shadows. And Olivia? He paused. Watch Donovan. If he is the leak, he's dangerous. Cornered, he vanished into the downpour as silently as he'd arrived. I stood alone in the alley, the motion sensor fob a cold, hard reality in my clenched fist. The rain soaked through my hoodie, chilling me to the bone. 72 hours. 2 impossible tasks. Plant the sensor in the heart of enemy territory, then ignite a media firestorm. I thought of Maya, sleeping fitfully in her borrowed bed, of Daniel's smug assurance, of Sarah's panicked warning, of Donovan's slippery charm, and Frank, the ghost with a grudge, pulling the strings from the darkness. The grenade wasn't just ticking anymore. I was throwing it straight into Daniel's perfectly constructed world. Let it shatter. Let the debris reveal every ugly truth he'd buried. Let him choke on the dust. The alley's darkness felt less like a prison now, and more like camouflage. I slipped the fob into my pocket, next to the burner phone. Time to go back to the archive. Time to clean house. The family court lobby smelled of cheap disinfectant, stale coffee, and the metallic tang of suppressed panic. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly pallor on the scuffed linoleum and anxious faces huddled on plastic chairs. I smoothed the borrowed blazer, too large, smelling of mothballs over my cleaner's uniform pants. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. Frank's burner sat heavy in my pocket, silent. Had the leak worked? Or had Daniel's lawyers smothered it before dawn? Across the crowded room, Daniel stood flanked by Miles Donovan and a sleek woman in a tailored suit, his new attack dog. He didn't look at me. His focus was absolute, predatory, fixed on the double doors marked Room 412. Maya's future lay behind them. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, wood panels darkened by decades of tension. The air crackled with unspoken pleas. I sat alone at the respondents' table, the polished surface reflecting my hollow-eyed exhaustion. Daniel's table was a fortress of leather briefcases and steely confidence. Judge Halpern entered, robes whispering, face impassive as granite. The hearing began with a dry recital of case numbers, but the atmosphere thickened like storm clouds. Donovan rose first, oozing practiced concern. Your Honor, we seek sole custody for Daniel Wright based on Olivia Wright's documented instability and financial irresponsibility. He called Brenda. She avoided my gaze, spine rigid in a stiff pantsuit, recounting the theft with robotic precision, my suspicious presence, the missing cash. Donovan entered the grainy security still into evidence. Miss Wright was the last person near the fund locker. Her termination is pending investigation. Next came Tom Archer. He looked diminished, eyes darting nervously. Donovan led him gently. Mr. Archer, as Olivia's neighbor, did you observe concerning behavior? Tom swallowed. She seemed stressed, anxious. After Daniel left, I'd hear her crying through the walls. Sometimes late at night, shouting at no one. He glanced at me, a flicker of shame quickly masked. Once, she accused my wife of inappropriate things. Unfounded. Hysterical. Liar. The word burned my tongue. Daniel's handiwork isolating me, twisting perception. Donovan painted the picture, the eviction, the suspended job, the paranoid accusations. An unfit guardian, a woman unraveling. Your witness, Donovan said to me, a faint smirk playing on his lips. The silence roared. My throat closed. I had the USB, Frank's notes, Sarah's warning, but introducing them felt like hurling pebbles at a fortress. Where was Frank? Where was the storm? I stood, my legs unsteady. Mr. Archer, I began, my voice raspy but clear. You signed documents for Legacy Holdings, LLC, correct? Tom paled. I don't recall. Documents that managed funds funneled to your wife's gallery? I pressed, pulling a notarized copy of the corporate registry Frank had given me from my folder. Donovan shot to his feet. Objection. Relevance? Judge Halpern raised a brow. Overruled. Foundation. Ms. Prepares. Ms. Right? Legacy Holdings paid Metro Property Solutions. I continued, laying another document, the lease agreement with Daniel's forged power of attorney signature on the table. Metro owns my building. The building Daniel claimed I neglected. But Legacy, managed by Mr. Archer, was siphoning its operating funds. I pointed at Tom. Funds Daniel Wright authorized to be stolen. Funds that paid Sarah Archer, his mistress. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Daniel's composure cracked, a vein pulsing at his temple. Tom looked ill. Donovan objected again, voice strained. Revelation. Hearsay. Hearsay. Before Halpern could rule, the courtroom door burst open. A harried man in a rumpled suit rushed in, waving a tablet. Your Honor, apologies. Breaking news. Night, Post, Tribune, all running exposés. Massive fraud scheme implicating Daniel Wright and Metro Property Solutions. He thrust the tablet toward the bailiff. Headline screamed, Slumlord Scheme, How a Lawyer Bleed Tenants Dry, Shell Corp Shuffle Funds Mistress's Gallery. Chaos erupted. Reporters materialized in the hallway, cameras flashing. Donovan lunged for the tablet, his face ashen. Daniel stared at the screen, then at me, raw hatred replacing his cool mask. You bitch? The gavel cracked, once, twice. Order, order, Halpern boomed. The bailiff showed her the tablet. Her eyes scanned the headlines, then flicked to the documents on my table, to Daniel's livid face, to Tom Archer shrinking in his seat. The weight of the evidence, corroborated in real time by screaming headlines, settled over the room like lead dust. Halpern's gaze landed on Daniel. Mr. Wright, these are extraordinary allegations, publicly substantiated. She turned to Donovan. Your client's credibility is now central to all matters before this court, including fitness, Daniel's lawyer sputtered. Your Honor, this is trial by media. Prejudicial, perhaps, Halpern said coldly, but the timing is illuminating. She looked at me, a flicker of assessment in her eyes. Ms. Wright, given these developments and the serious questions raised about Mr. Wright's conduct and financial probity, this court is inclined to postpone the custody determination pending a full financial and ethical review of both parties. She banged her gavel. Hearing adjourned. Guardianship petition suspended. Ms. Wright retains temporary custody of Maya Reyes. Next case. The gavel's echo hung in the sudden silence. Daniel was on his feet, shouting at Donovan, jabbing a finger toward me, his facade obliterated. Tom Archer fled, pursued by murmurs and camera flashes. I sank back into the chair, my legs liquid. Maya was safe. For now. Across the chaos, Donovan caught my eye. Not anger, something colder. Calculating, he mouthed 2 words, clear despite the din, Sarah's next. Then he turned, shepherding a seething Daniel toward a side exit, away from the media frenzy. The victory felt hollow, brittle. I'd exposed Daniel, saved Maya temporarily, but Donovan's warning slithered into my mind. Sarah had tried to warn me. Was she Daniel's next target? Or mine? And where was Frank in this storm? I stepped into the hallway, the cacophony of shouted questions and camera clicks washing over me. The borrowed blazer felt like armor riddled with cracks. I'd won the battle in room 412, but the war with Daniel, with Donovan, with the ghosts of past choices had just escalated. The grenade had detonated. Now I stood in the crater, breathing toxic dust. The borrowed blazer scratched my neck like a noose made of wool. Outside family court, the cacophony was a physical wall, shouted questions, camera flashes strobing the gray drizzle, microphones thrust like weapons. I pushed through, head down, the blazer's shoulders swallowing me whole. Maya. I needed to get to Maya. Daniel's roar. This isn't over. Cut through the noise, raw and venomous, but was swallowed by the media pack swarming him and Donovan near their Blacktown car. Donovan's cold eyes found mine through the chaos. Sarah's next. The words were a shard of ice in my gut. The safe house was Mrs. Gable's old apartment, a cramped, third-floor walk-up above a bodega in a neighborhood Daniel wouldn't deign to drive through. The air smelled of mothballs, cat pee, and simmering beans from below. Maya sat curled on a worn floral sofa, clutching a tattered stuffed rabbit. Her eyes, wide and dark like her mother's, held a fear too old for 8. "Aunt Liv?" Her voice was small. "Did you win?" I knelt before her, the cheap blazer pooling on the stained rug. "For now, sweetheart. You're staying with me." I forced a smile, my cheeks aching with the unfamiliar strain. "We're safe here, safe, safe." The word tasted like ash. Mrs. Gable's ghost felt palpable in the peeling wallpaper, the water-stained ceiling. Frank's words echoed. He cost me my badge. My purpose. Daniel ruined lives. And I'd just lit a fuse under his empire. What fallout would hit Maya? What would hit Sarah? Sleep was a fractured thing. Every siren, every creak of the old building jolted me awake. Daniel's livid face. Donovan's icy warning. The ledger, still hidden, a ticking bomb Frank had gone silent on. Where was he? Had Daniel's people found him? Or had he vanished once his vendetta found its spark? By dawn, the news cycle was a feeding frenzy. Headlines dissected the slumlord scheme, photos of Daniel splashed beside Sarah's gallery facade. Mistress funded by stolen rent. Attorney's web of shellcore. Daniel's firm issued a terse statement denying unfounded allegations, promising full cooperation. Damage control. But the stench was out. I needed air. Real air. Real air. Not the cloying fear of the safe house. Leaving Maya with Mrs. Gable's ancient neighbor, Mrs. Petrova, who eyed me with wary kindness, I walked. Aimless. Exhaustion dragged at my bones, the borrowed blazer replaced by my cleaner's uniform, now feeling like a shroud. My feet, moving on their own, carried me downtown. Past glittering storefronts Daniel's stolen money could buy. Past the Martin and Crouch Tower, its glass facade reflecting a sky heavy with unshed rain. And then I was there. Outside S. Archer Gallery. The sleek chrome sign looked tarnished in the flat morning light. The display window, once showcasing abstract defiance, now held only a single piece, a jagged sculpture of broken mirror shards titled Refraction of Truth. Ironic? Or a plea. The door was locked, closed sign hanging crooked. Through the glass, I saw movement in the dim interior. Sarah. She looked spectral. Hair unbrushed, face pale and bare, wrapped in a rumpled silk robe over what might have been pajamas. She was frantically pulling paintings from the walls, stacking them against a packing crate. Fleeing? Or hiding? Our eyes met through the glass. Hers widened, flooded with a panic that mirrored my own churning dread. She hesitated, then hurried to the door, fumbling with the lock. Olivia. Her voice was a rasp, raw as scraped bone. She pulled me inside, the door clicking shut behind us, plunging us into the gallery's hushed, expensive gloom. The scent of jasmine was gone, replaced by dust and desperation. You saw? The news? Everyone saw, I said flatly. She flinched. I didn't know, not all of it. Not about the building. The tenants. She hugged herself, shivering despite the robe. Daniel, he said it was investments. Loans. That Tom was handling it. I just signed what he put in front of me. Her gaze darted to the street, paranoid. He called. Last night. Screaming. Said I ruined him. Said I'd pay, Sarah's next. Donovan's warning wasn't idle. Daniel, cornered and exposed, would lash out. And Sarah, the visible symbol of his downfall, was the easiest target. Why warn me? I asked, the question hanging heavy. The ledger note. Tears welled, spilling over. Guilt? Fear? I don't know anymore. He used me, Olivia, like he used everyone. But I saw what he was doing to you. The eviction, the job. Maya. She wiped her face roughly. I thought if you had a chance, maybe, her voice broke. He knows I warned you. He knows. The silence stretched, thick with shared terror. We were bound now, not by friendship, but by the fallout of Daniel's destruction. Two women caught in the crater of his grenade. What will you do? I asked. Run. While I can. She gestured helplessly at the half-packed paintings. He'll freeze everything. The accounts, the gallery. He'll come for anything he thinks is his. Her eyes met mine, pleading. He'll come for you too. Properly now. Not through lawyers. He's unhinged. A chill deeper than the gallery's air conditioning seeped into me. She was right. Courtroom tactics were over. Daniel was stripped bare, his empire crumbling. A wounded animal was infinitely more dangerous. My burner phone buzzed in my pocket, a single harsh vibration. A text from an unknown number, archive secure. Package delivered. Watch your 6. They're hunting. F. Frank. All Frank. Alive. And the ledger? Delivered where? Relief ward with fresh fear. They're hunting. Who? Daniel's thugs? Donovan's fixers? Sarah misread my expression. What is it? Nothing good, I murmured, staring at the message. Frank was moving the pieces, but the board was now a battlefield. Sarah thrust a small brass key into my hand. Storage locker, 17B. Hudson Mini Storage. There's things. Copies of documents Daniel gave me. Emails. Maybe something you can use. Her hand trembled. Take it. Before he finds it? The key felt cold, heavy with secrets. Another piece of Daniel's crumbling empire. Another target. I have to go, she whispered, already turning back to her frantic packing. Please, just go. I stepped back onto the sidewalk. The gallery door locked behind me with a final click. Sarah Archer, the mistress, the beneficiary, the unwitting accomplice, was vanishing into the wreckage. The borrowed blazer was gone. I was just Olivia again. The cleaner, the target. Holding a key to a locker full of ghosts, while the hunter, wounded and furious, closed in from the shadows. The victory in room 412 hadn't ended the war. It had only made the battlefield deadlier. Hudson Mini Storage reeked of despair and damp concrete, a catacomb for abandoned dreams and dangerous secrets. Unit 7B's roll-up door screeched in protest, revealing a tomb crammed with Sarah Archer's curated chaos. Bubble-wrapped canvases leaned against stacked bankers' boxes, a tarnished floor lamp cast long skeletal shadows, and the thick scent of oil paint and dust choked the air. Sarah's key felt cold and slick in my palm. Things you can use, she'd said. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant drip of water and the frantic drumming of my own heart. They're hunting. I found the box tucked behind a wrapped sculpture resembling twisted rebar, unlabeled, heavier than the others. Inside, no jewels or cash. Just paper. Thick, damning reams of it. Photocopies of contracts with Daniel's jagged signature authorizing consulting fees to legacy holdings. Printouts of emails. Sarah to Daniel pleading for more time on gallery loans, him replying with chilling detachment, "Leverage your assets, Sarah." Or lose them, and beneath it all a slim manila folder marked with a single, typed initial, D. Inside the folder, the air left my lungs. Not financial records. Medical records. Daniels. Pages of psychiatric evaluations from Silver Pines Clinic, dated intermittently over the past 5 years. Diagnoses leaped off the page: narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial tendencies, high risk for pathological deception and exploitation, prescription logs for mood stabilizers he'd never mentioned, never taken, notes from a Dr. Evans: patient exhibits grandiose delusions regarding invulnerability, demonstrates profound lack of empathy, expresses fixation on erasing obstacles, specifically mentions spouse we and the Gable liability. Gable. Mrs. Gable, Frank's case. Daniel hadn't just ruined Frank, he'd targeted the woman whose testimony could have stopped him. Erased her. A small, unmarked USB drive taped to the inside flap completed the horror show. I jammed it into my burner phone. Folders bloomed, surveillance photos, OW grainy shots of me leaving work, boarding the bus, entering Golden Dragon. Time stamped over months. Audio recordings, home. Snippets of phone calls, me talking to Maya, crying alone at night, arguing with Daniel about bills. Documents, forged. Drafts of fake performance reviews for my job, fabricated tenant complaints about me, even a mocked-up police report suggesting erratic behavior. He wasn't just framing me, he was meticulously constructing an alternate reality where Olivia Wright was unhinged, dangerous, unfit to exist. A metallic clang echoed from the corridor outside, distant but sharp. My head snapped up. Silence descended again, heavier than before. Paranoia? Or pursuers? Frank's warning vibrated in my skull. Watch your six. I stuffed the medical records and USB back into the folder, shoving it deep into my cleaner's bag beneath spare rags. My hands shook. The psychiatric evaluation, it explained everything. The cold calculation. The utter lack of remorse. The pleasure he took in the dismantling. Daniel wasn't just corrupt, he was clinically, dangerously broken. And he saw me as an obstacle to be erased. Permanently. Another sound. Softer this time. A scrape of shoe leather on concrete. Too close. Right outside Unit 7B. Not my imagination. Panic, cold and sharp, flooded my veins. Exit. Where's the exit? The main corridor was a death trap. Fire exit? The map near the entrance flashed in my mind. Alley access, rear of the building. Past rows of units. Too far. Think, cleaner. I knew spaces, knew how to move unseen. My gaze snagged on the wrapped sculpture. Tall, bulky. I heaved it sideways, blocking the door's inward swing just as a shadow fell across the thin strip of light under the metal door. A hand rattled the handle. Then a voice, low and unfamiliar, definitely saw her come in here. Unit 7B. A second voice, colder. Open it. I didn't wait. Behind stacks of Sarah's unsold canvases was a narrow gap against the cinderblock wall. I squeezed into the darkness, pulling a large, dust-laden drop cloth over myself, just as the screech of the roll-up door grinding open assaulted my ears. Light flooded the unit. Tidy little nest, voice one muttered. Footsteps crunched on concrete. 2 pairs, boxes. Art crap, where is she? Check behind everything. Voice 2 was closer. Methodical. A flashlight beam sliced through gaps in the canvases, sweeping over the spot where I'd stood seconds before. It lingered on the box I pulled out, its lid askew. She was here. Recently, the beam moved toward my hiding place. I held my breath, plastered against the cold wall, the drop cloth smelling of mildew and turpentine. The light swept over the cloth, paused. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in bone. Nothing back here but junk, voice one called from near the entrance. Maybe she ducked into another unit? The flashlight beam withdrew. Maybe. Check the alley exit. She can't have gotten far. Footsteps retreated. The roll-up door screeched shut again, plunging the unit back into near darkness. Silence. I didn't move. Counted to 100. Then 200. The only sound was my own ragged breathing and the drip, drip, drip of distant water. Slowly, painfully, I peeled off the drop cloth. The folder in my bag felt like a live bomb. Daniel hadn't just sent lawyers. He'd sent hunters, and they knew where to look. Crawling out, I avoided the center of the unit, sticking to the shadows near the wall. The alley exit was my only hope. I moved silently, cleaner quiet, every sense screaming. Reaching the heavy fire door, I eased it open a crack. The alley was narrow, cluttered with dumpsters, smelling of rotting garbage and wet brick. Empty. For now. I slipped out, melting into the grimy shadows, the folder containing Daniel's monstrous truth pressed against my side. He wasn't just coming for me. He was coming to erase his own reflection, the monstrous self revealed in Silver Pines Clinic's records. I had the proof. The grenade was now a nuclear device, and the countdown to detonation had just begun. The hunters were close. The only way out was through the fire. The alley's stench of rotten produce and wet brick was a welcome cloak after the storage unit's tomb. I pressed myself against the cold, graffiti-scarred wall, the manila folder a lead weight in my bag. Voices echoed from inside Hudson Mini Storage, muffled curses, the clang of metal. They were still searching, hunting, Daniel's hunters, unleashed and close. Rain, cold and insistent, slicked my hair to my face, mingling with the sour taste of fear. Frank's message burned in my mind, package delivered. Watch your six. Where was he? And what package? The ledger? The ledger? I knew these service alleys like the veins on my own hands, the product of 1,000 pre-dawn shifts hauling trash. Darting past overflowing dumpsters, I moved with cleaner's silence, avoiding puddles that could betray my steps. The hunters' voices faded behind me, replaced by the city's distant groan. My destination, the abandoned textile mill on River Street. Frank's first rendezvous point, scrawled on a greasy napkin months ago. If the lights are out, knock twice on the loading dock door. Wait 5, knock once. A ghost protocol for a ghost ally. The mill loomed, a hulking silhouette against the bruised sky, windows boarded, chain-link fence sagging. Dark. Silent. Rain drummed on the corrugated metal roof like frantic fingers. I approached the loading dock, heart pounding against Daniel's damning medical records. 2 knocks. Wood against rusted metal, loud in the wet silence. I counted seconds, breath fogging the air. 1, 2, 3, a scraping sound from inside. 4, 5, 1 knock. A section of the dock door slid open a foot, revealing not Frank, but the man from the archives. Salt and pepper hair, scar bisecting his brow, eyes like chips of obsidian in the gloom. He held a compact flashlight, beam pointed down. Right. Inside, fast. His voice was gravel wrapped in velvet. I slipped through the gap. The cavernous space swallowed the light, smelling of machine oil, damp wool, and ozone. Forgotten looms stood like skeletal sentinels. The man, who was he, slid the door shut, plunging us into mere darkness except for his low beam. Frank's busy, he said, preempting my question. Sent me, name's Silas. We served together, before Daniel. He didn't elaborate. The package is secure. Delivered to the right hands. The ledger and your photos. Sarah's note. In a Dawes safe. Along with a compelling narrative from Frank. Silas's gaze was unnervingly direct. Your husband's world is imploding faster than he can spin it. The fraud charges are just the appetizer. The medical records you found? A grim flicker of approval. That's the main course. Relief warred with terror. The Daw had it. Daniel's pathology laid bare. But Silas's presence screamed escalation. Why you? Why here? Because Daniel isn't playing nice anymore, Silas stated flatly. He knows the ledger's gone. Knows you have something worse. Donovan's scrambling, but Daniel, he's bypassing lawyers. He's activated his, cleaners. The ones searching the storage unit? Professionals, not local muscle. Imported trouble, the hunters. Professionals. The cold in my bones deepened. What do they want? The records. And you, permanently, Silas's voice held no dramatics, just cold fact. Daniel's diagnosis? The antisocial tendencies? He's embracing them, erasing liabilities. Sarah's gone dark, probably smart. You're next on the list. Panic threatened to choke me. Maya. Mrs. Petrova's apartment wasn't secure. Maya. Frank's moving her. And it's some point to as fee braced as braced, trial, or circumstances. Why us circumstances of Frank try. Now, safer place, Silas cut me off. Your job is to vanish. Until the da moves, which will be soon. Vanish? How? They're everywhere. Silas pulled a small black key fob from his pocket. Not a car key. Sub-level parking. Black sedan, plate ends 7J2. Engine running. Back seat. He pressed it into my hand. Go to the Starlight Motel. Room 1114. Paid for the week. Cash. Don't use your burner except for this number. He handed me a slip of paper with a single handwritten digit string. Burn it after you memorize it. Only call if compromised. Otherwise, wait. Wait for what? For the hammer to fall? Silas's scar seemed to gleam in the flashlight's edge. The day has the ledger, your evidence, the medical records. They're building an ironclad RICO case. Fraud, witness tampering, conspiracy. But they need one more piece. A direct link to the physical sabotage. Proof Daniel ordered the building's neglect that led to real harm. Understanding dawned, cold and terrible. Mrs. Rossi's flood. The collapsed ceiling in 3C last winter. People got hurt. Silas nodded. Hospital records exist. Suppressed by Daniel's reach. Buried. Frank's persuading a certain hospital administrator to find them. Tonight. Once the DA has proof of physical harm caused by his embezzlement, or the RICO charges stick, I finished. Corporate corruption became organized crime. Prison, not disbarment. Exactly. Silas checked a heavy, military-style watch. Go, now. The car's 5 blocks. Stick to the service tunnels under the old market. You know them? I did. Steam tunnels. Janitor territory. I nodded. Good, move like a ghost, don't look back. He turned off his flashlight. Absolute darkness swallowed us. Room 11-4. Wait, the end game starts at dawn. I didn't hesitate. The key fob felt like both salvation and a death sentence. I groped for the loading dock door, slid it open just enough. Rain and the distant wail of a siren greeted me. Silas was already gone, vanished into the mill's deeper shadows. I plunged into the wet night, heading for the grating that hid the steam tunnel entrance near the dumpster. The hunters were close. Daniel was unhinged. But Silas was right. I knew these shadows. I was the cleaner, the ghost. And I had one last mess to disappear from before the final, explosive cleanup. The car waited. Room 1114 waited. And Daniel's monstrous truth, now in the hands of the law, was ticking down to its detonation. Room 114 at the Starlight Motel smelled of bleach fighting a losing battle against mildew and ancient cigarette smoke. Thin floral curtains, half-drawn, filtered the neon glow of the vacancy sign into stripes of garish pink on the threadbare carpet. The air conditioner rattled like a dying animal, failing to dispel the stifling heat of confinement. I sat on the edge of the stiff bed, the manila folder containing Daniel's monstrous psyche lying open beside me. The psychiatric evaluation's clinical terms, grandiose delusions, pathological deception, lack of empathy, seemed to pulse in the dim light, explaining a decade of calculated cruelty. Erasing obstacles. Mrs. Gable. Me, Maya, Sarah. The burner phone was a cold weight in my hand. Silas's number, memorized, the slip of paper burned in the rust-stained sink, felt like a lifeline to a ghost fleet. Only call if compromised. The silence was the loudest sound. Every creak of the motel sign, every distant car horn, every footstep in the corridor outside sent jolts of adrenaline through my exhausted body. Were Daniel's hunters checking every door? Had they tracked the sedan? Hours bled into each other. I traced the water stain on the ceiling, its shape morphing from a continent into a noose. Maya was safe. Silas said Frank moved her. Where? The uncertainty gnawed. Was Mrs. Petrova's gentle confusion shielding her? Or was she huddled somewhere strange, scared, asking for her Aunt Liv? The image of her clutching that worn rabbit was a physical ache beneath my ribs. The cheap alarm clock glowed 5047 a.m. Dawn was a rumor beyond the grimy window. The city felt suspended, holding its breath. I picked up the remote, its plastic sticky. The local news channel flickered to life, sound low. Ongoing fallout from the explosive allegations against prominent attorney Daniel Wright, a two-chipper anchor intoned. Footage showed the courthouse chaos from yesterday. Daniel's enraged face. Donovan's icy composure cracking. Then, a new graphic, RICO investigation looms. Sources hint, denying organized crime statutes. My breath hitched. Silas. Frank, they did it. The DA wasn't just nibbling, they were going for the throat. RICO meant decades. Assets seized. Total ruin. The screen cut to a live shot outside Daniel's sleek apartment building. Reporters clustered like vultures. Suddenly, the glass doors burst open. Daniel emerged, flanked by Donovan and two hulking men in dark suits. His hunters? His face was a mask of barely contained fury, eyes darting like a cornered animal's. Microphones thrust forward. Mr. Wright, any comment on the RICO speculation? Is it true the DA has medical records detailing mental instability? Where is Sarah Archer? Daniel ignored them, shoving past, heading for a waiting black SUV. Donovan tried to shield him, barking, "No comment." But Daniel suddenly whirled, his polished facade shattering. He lunged towards the nearest camera, finger jabbing the lens, spittle flying. Lies. All of it. Fabricated by a vengeful, unstable woman. A cleaning woman with nothing left to lose but her delusions. His voice was a raw, ragged scream, devoid of its usual calculated charm. The clinical detachment from the Silver Pines records was gone, replaced by naked, sputtering rage. She's poisoned everything. And she'll pay. I'll see her buried. Donovan physically hauled him back, hissing something urgent into his ear. The two suits moved in, blocking the view as they shoved Daniel into the SUV. The door slammed, tires screeched. The camera caught Donovan's face for a split second. Not anger, but cold, stark fear. Fear of his client's unraveling. Fear of the abyss Daniel was dragging them all into. The anchor stuttered, momentarily lost for words. Well, intense scenes there outside Daniel Wright's residence. Clearly the pressure is mounting. I muted the TV. The silence rushed back, but it felt different now. Charged. Daniel's public meltdown wasn't just damaging, it was catastrophic. A live broadcast of the pathology described in the medical records. Grandiose delusions met reality. Lack of empathy on full display. The obstacle wasn't being erased, it was screaming back. The burner phone vibrated. Once. A text from the memorized number, hammer dropped. Rossi and Chen medical files secured. Da, moving, stay dark. Car coming for you at 10. S. Rossi. Chen, the flooded apartment. The collapsed ceiling. Proof of physical harm caused by Daniel's embezzlement. The final piece for RICO. A strange stillness settled over me. Not peace. Not yet, but the frantic terror of the hunt receded, replaced by a cold, clear certainty. Daniel was done. His hunters, his lawyers, his money, none of it could stop the avalanche he triggered. The DA had the ledger, the Shellcorp trail, the medical proof of his broken mind, and now, the evidence of tangible harm. RICO was a tomb closing. I looked at the folder beside me, Daniel's psychiatric evaluation stark under the neon-striped gloom. Erasing obstacles. He'd tried to erase me, to erase the truth of what he was. Instead, he'd erased himself. The motel room's oppressive air felt lighter. Dawn was breaking, casting pale gray light through the grimy curtains. Outside, the city was waking up, a city where Daniel Wright was no longer a predator, but prey. I had survived the night. Maya was safe. The hunters hadn't found me. At 10 a.m., a car would come. Not Silas, probably. Another ghost in Frank's network. It would take me somewhere. To Maya? To the DA? To the aftermath? For the first time in months, the path ahead wasn't shrouded in Daniel's lies. It was paved with the rubble of his ruin. I closed the manila folder, hiding the monster's clinical portrait. Outside, a bird sang, oblivious to the storm that had just passed. The war wasn't over, the legal battles, the fallout, but the man who started it was finished. I leaned back against the scratchy headboard, the rattling ack, now a comforting hum. The grenade hadn't just detonated. It had vaporized its maker. All I had to do now was wait for the dust to settle and step out of the shadows. The sedan that picked me up from the starlight was unmarked. driven by a woman with salt and pepper braids and eyes that missed nothing. Clara, she'd said, her voice calm as still water. She didn't offer a last name. We drove in silence, leaving the city's jagged skyline behind, winding into tree-lined suburbs where the air smelled of cut grass and damp earth. The safe house wasn't Mrs. Petrova's. It was a small, clapboard cottage with blue shutters, tucked behind a sprawling oak. Peaceful, alien. Clara parked in the detached garage. She's inside. Waiting. She. Maya. The word unlocked something brittle in my chest. I pushed open the cottage door. Sunlight streamed through lace curtains onto polished wood floors. The scent was lemon polish and pancakes. Maya sat at a small kitchen table, dwarfed by a chunky knit sweater that wasn't hers. Her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hops, sat propped beside a half-eaten stack. She looked up, her eyes enormous in her pale face. For a heartbeat, fear flickered there, the residue of Daniel's poison, of being ripped from everything familiar. "Aunt Liv?" Her voice was a whisper. I dropped my bag, the heavy folder forgotten. "Hey, sweet pea." I crossed the room slowly, kneeling beside her chair, my cleaner's uniform suddenly feeling like a relic from another life. I didn't hug her, not yet. The space between us felt fragile. Glass thin. "You okay?" She nodded, her lower lip trembling. "Mrs. Clara makes pancakes. With chocolate chips. A tiny offering. A bridge. Best kind," I managed, my throat tight. I reached out, slowly, and touched her hand resting beside Mr. Hops. Small, cold, she didn't pull away. Her fingers curled slightly around mine. Is he gone?" she asked, staring at our joined hands. "Uncle Daniel?" The question hung, heavy with everything unsaid. The shouting, the lies, the terrifying strangers who'd come to take her. "He can't hurt us anymore, Maya," I said, choosing the words with care. Truth, but not the brutal whole truth. Not yet, he's going away. For a long time. Relief washed over her small features, swift and profound. She launched herself off the chair, wrapping thin arms around my neck with surprising strength. "I knew you'd win," she mumbled into my shoulder, her voice thick. I told Mr. Hops. I held her, breathing in the scent of maple syrup and child sweat, feeling the tremors subside in her small frame. The dam inside me held, barely. Tears pricked, not of sorrow, but of a bone-deep exhaustion mixed with a fragile, terrifying hope. We'd survived the storm. The cottage, the sunlight, Maya's weight in my arms, it felt unreal. Precious. Clara moved quietly in the background, clearing plates, filling a kettle. No questions, just space. Later, she handed me a stack of folded clothes, soft jeans, a plain gray t-shirt. Showers down the hall. Take your time. Standing under the hot water, scrubbing away the motel's stale fear and the lingering grit of the storage unit, felt like shedding a skin. The uniform lay in a heap on the floor, a blue puddle of the past. The borrowed clothes were clean, anonymous, free. When I emerged, towel drying my hair, Clara was on the porch swing, sipping tea. Maya was drawing at the kitchen table, absorbed. "Silas called," Clara said softly, not looking at me. "The Dawes office wants a statement. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., they'll send a car, a statement. Not a battle, not a hunt, an accounting, the beginning of closure." "Okay." Frank's tied up, she added, a hint of something unreadable in her tone, wrapping loose ends. But he said, "Job's done, job's done." The ledger, the medical records, the harm done to Rossi and Chen. All delivered. Daniel's empire was dust. I nodded, the weight of it settling differently now. Not a grenade, but a burden laid down. And Donovan? The name tasted sour. Clara's lips thinned. Cutting deals, singing like a canary to save his own skin. Throwing Daniel under every bus he can find. She sipped her tea. Typical, of course. Donovan's loyalty was always to Donovan. The fear I'd seen on his face outside Daniel's apartment wasn't for his client. It was for his own future. Now he was bartering it with the truth Daniel had paid him to bury. The afternoon bled into evening. Simple things, helping Maya with a puzzle. Listening to Clara hum while she chopped vegetables for soup. The quiet was a living thing, settling around us, gentle but insistent. Healing wasn't a switch flipped. It was this: the absence of imminent threat. The rhythm of a knife on a cutting board. Maya's soft laughter when Mr. Hops helped with the puzzle. After dinner, Maya fell asleep on the sofa, Mr. Hops tucked under her chin. I covered her with a soft throw, brushing a stray hair from her forehead. Her breathing was deep even, safe. I stepped onto the porch. Crickets chirped in the gathering dusk. Fireflies winked in the tall grass beyond the fence. Clara joined me, handing me a mug of chamomile tea. "It's not over," I said quietly, staring into the darkening yard. The legal battles, the fallout, the echoes of Daniel's destruction, they would linger. "No," Clara agreed, her voice calm. "But the war is? This?" She gestured to the cottage, the sleeping child inside. "This is the after. You learn to live in it, one quiet day at a time." She was right. The frantic energy of survival, the razor's edge of fear, it was gone, replaced by a profound stillness, both daunting and peaceful. I had no job, no home, a mountain of scars. But I had Maya, and I had this quiet porch, this cup of warm tea, this woman who asked for nothing but offered sanctuary. Tomorrow I would speak to the Da. I would tell them about Daniel, about the lies, the fear, the medical records that explained the monster. I would do it for Mrs. Gable, for Rossi and Chen, for Maya. But tonight, I stood on the porch of the blue-shuttered cottage. I breathed in air that didn't taste of betrayal or bleach. I listened to the crickets. I watched the fireflies. For the first time in years, I simply existed. Not hiding, not fighting, just being in the quiet after the storm. The path ahead was uncharted, but it was mine. And it started here, in this fragile, hard-won stillness. The Dawes conference room smelled of stale coffee and wood polish, a world away from the mildew and fear of the safe houses. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating dust motes dancing over the polished mahogany table. I sat across from Assistant District Attorney Rossi, no relation to the tenant, she'd clarified with a tight smile, her posture radiating calm competence. A digital recorder blinked silently between us. My borrowed clothes felt strangely formal in this space of power. "Miss Wright," Ada Rossi began, her voice measured, "thank you for coming. We have your initial deposition, the evidence provided by unnamed sources, a slight nod acknowledging Frank and Silas's ghosts. It's compelling. Ironclad, frankly. Daniel Wright faces multiple RICO predicates: fraud, witness tampering, conspiracy, mail fraud. The medical records, she tapped a thin file, a summary, not the damning originals, provide critical context for intent and pattern. She slid a document across the table. A plea agreement summary. Donovan's name screamed from the header. "He's rolling over," Rossi stated flatly, providing detailed testimony on Daniel's operational structure, the shell core, the coercion of witnesses like Brenda and Tom Archer, the deliberate sabotage of your building's maintenance leading to injuries. He's implicating Daniel in the attempt to frame you for theft and the illegal surveillance. She met my gaze. He confirms Daniel directed the professionals sent to retrieve the medical records and silence you. A cold shiver traced my spine despite the sunlight. Silence me. The clinical term for what those hunters in the storage unit were meant to do. Donovan, the architect of Daniel's legal defenses, was now meticulously dismantling them to save himself. The ultimate betrayal. He's seeking immunity? My voice sounded steady, distant, limited. For the financial crimes and the conspiracy elements directly tied to Daniel's directives. He'll still face disbarment and likely probation for accessory after the fact regarding the intimidation tactics. Rossi's expression was neutral. His cooperation is valuable. It eliminates reasonable doubt. Daniel Wright will spend decades in a federal facility. Minimum security is off the table. The finality of it landed. Decades. Not just disgraced, but caged. The monster contained. Justice, cold and procedural, not the fiery vengeance I'd sometimes imagined in the darkest hours. It felt sufficient, like a heavy door slamming shut on a nightmare. "And Sarah Archer?" I asked. Voluntarily cooperating, providing documentation of Daniel's financial manipulations through her. No charges anticipated against her. She's relocated. Rossi closed the plea summary. "Your testimony tomorrow is largely procedural. confirming the authenticity of the materials you discovered, the harassment you endured. The DA's office will handle the rest. She stood, offering her hand. You did the right thing, Miss Wright. It took immense courage. I shook her hand. Courage? It felt like survival. Desperate, clawing survival. But I nodded. The car Clara sent took me not back to the blue-shuttered cottage, but to a small, newly leased office space downtown. Olivia Wright, Environmental Reclamation Services. Read the simple vinyl lettering on the glass door. Frank's final ghostly act, a seed of a business, funded by a discreet consultancy fee drawn from assets frozen in Daniel's case, routed through layers even Donovan couldn't trace. Janitorial work, elevated. Deep cleaning for businesses after fires, floods, or corporate scandals. Restoring order from chaos. Inside, the air smelled of fresh paint and possibility. Maya sat at a small, second-hand desk, tongue poking out in concentration as she drew on a pristine notepad. Clara, surprisingly, stood by a new industrial sink, testing the faucet. Figured someone needed to keep the books straight, Clara said, her usual calm tinged with something like contentment. And teach this one proper invoicing. She nodded at Maya, who beamed. Aunt Liv, look, I made the logo. Maya held up her drawing, a stylized dove holding a green leaf. Clean, renewal, hope, the simplicity of it. The clean lines of the empty office waiting for its first job, Clara's steady presence, Maya's bright pride, was almost overwhelming. This wasn't just safety. It was foundation, purpose forged in the crucible of chaos. Weeks blurred into a new rhythm. Early mornings planning quotes for offices needing post-renovation deep cleans. Afternoons with Maya, homework spread over the office's small conference table. Clara's quiet efficiency turning chaos into order, both financial and logistical. The first jobs were small, a bakery after a grease fire, a boutique recovering from a burst pipe. But the work was tangible, satisfying, scrubbing away grime, leaving behind order and the faint, clean scent of citrus disinfectant. It was penance and promise in every polished surface. News of Daniel's formal indictment, Donovan's plea deal, and the impending RICO trial became background noise, reported with grim satisfaction by the local news. I watched Daniel's perp walk once. Hollow-eyed, cuffed, the grandiosity finally shattered against the cold reality of steel bars. No triumph stirred, only a quiet acknowledgement the chapter was closed. One crisp autumn afternoon, I stood at the window of our small office, watching sunlight gild the city rooftops. Maya was laughing with Clara over a misentered invoice. The industrial washing machine hummed in the back, cleaning the uniforms for our next job. My uniform. Blue, like the old one, but new. Mine. Frank's final message had arrived weeks ago on a postcard with no return address, postmarked from somewhere coastal, dust settles. Light remains. Plant your garden. No signature needed. The ghost had moved on, his ledger balanced. The phone rang, a potential client, a tech startup needing post-construction cleanup. I picked it up, the receiver cool and solid in my hand. Environmental Reclamation Services. Olivia Wright, speaking. How can we restore your space? The future wasn't perfect. Scars remained, faint but present. Trust was still a cautious seedling. But the frantic terror, the hunted feeling, was gone. Replaced by the solid weight of a mop handle, the scent of clean floors, the sound of Maya's laughter, and the quiet certainty of work well done. The war was over, the debris cleared. Now, we built. Not a fortress against the past, but a home within the present. Grounded, clean, quietly, fiercely alive. The light, earned through every storm, finally felt warm on my skin. The chemical tang of industrial-grade citrus cleaner hung heavy in the air of the renovated bookstore, our first major contract. Water sloshed in my bucket, its rhythmic slosh a counterpoint to the whine of Clara's floor buffer 2 aisles over. 3 weeks since Environmental Reclamation Services opened its doors, and the reality was less polished brochures, more aching shoulders and the satisfying scrape of grime yielding to microfiber. Maya, safely ensconced at Clara's apartment with homework and Mr. Hops after school, was the silent engine driving every stroke of my mop. This job was baptism by flood. A burst pipe had turned the beloved chapter and verse into a swampy tomb for warped paperbacks and mildewed carpet. Insurance covered the restoration. We handled the aftermath, the sludge, the stench, the lingering ghosts of damp. Kneeling to scrub adhesive residue left by ruined carpet tiles, I felt the familiar burn in my biceps. The calluses were forming on my palms. Different uniform, same fundamental truth. Dirt didn't vanish by wishing. It required pressure, chemistry, and sweat. Delivery for right. A voice boomed from the storefront. A burly man in coveralls wrestled a gleaming stainless steel industrial extractor through the plastic-sheeted doorway. Our first big equipment purchase, financed by a painfully honest bank loan and Frank's seed money. Seeing it, powerful, purposeful, sent a jolt through my fatigue. Hours. Sign here, ma'am. He thrust a clipboard at me. As I scrawled my name, Olivia Wright, owner. The title still felt foreign, exhilarating, terrifying. The delivery man eyed the chaotic scene, piles of ruined books awaiting recycling, the skeleton of bookshelves, Clara emerging, wiping sweat from her brow with a gloved hand. Big job. Foundational, I replied, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. Clearing the damage so the story can start fresh. He nodded, seemingly satisfied with the philosophy, and left. Clara joined me, running a critical hand over the extractor's hose. Beast. This'll cut drying time in half on the back section. She paused, looking at me. Got a call while you were wrestling the children's section. City offices. They need a deep clean after an incident. She didn't elaborate, but the slight hesitation spoke volumes. It was the building where Daniel had held court, where Donovan still slithered through plea deals. The old panic tried to flutter, memories of polished marble floors echoing with his condescension, the scent of his cedar cologne masking deceit. I closed my eyes, breathed in the sharp citrus and underlying damp. Not his domain anymore. Mine, my skills. Did you quote? Ballparked. Hi. It's symbolically messy. Clara's gaze was assessing. We can pass. Plenty of other jobs. The unspoken question hung, can you handle it? Not the dirt, but the ghosts. Maya's face flashed in my mind. Her tentative smile over pancakes, her fierce concentration on the Dove logo. Her safety, her future, was built on this business, on my ability to face the past without flinching. Send the formal quote, I said, meeting Clara's eyes. Full deep clean. Biohazard protocols if needed. We reclaim spaces. Clara. All spaces. The words felt like a vow, solid as the extractor beside me. She nodded, a flicker of pride in her calm eyes. Done. She pulled out her phone, already tapping. The rest of the afternoon was a symphony of labor. The extractor roared to life, sucking stagnant water from deep within the subfloor with a satisfying gurgle. Clara orchestrated the drying fans, their drone blending with the buffer's whine. I attacked the remaining adhesive, the citrus scent rising like a victory flag. The physicality grounded me, each cleared patch of floor a tangible step away from the chaos Daniel had wrought. This was order I created. Control I wielded. As dusk painted the high bookstore windows orange, we stood surveying the transformed space. The ruined carpet was gone, revealing concrete floors awaiting their new covering. The walls, stripped of damaged drywall, were clean and dry. The air, finally, held only the crisp scent of ozone from the fans and our cleaner. Exhaustion was a deep ache, but it was a clean ache, earned. Locking up, I found Clara leaning against her old station wagon, sipping water. City quotes sent. They blinked at the price but didn't say no. She handed me a bottle. You good? I leaned beside her, the cool metal of the car seeping through my work shirt. The city skyline glittered in the distance. The building that housed Daniel's old office, a dark block among the lights. I will be, I said, the truth of it settling into my bones. It's just another space needing reclaiming. Clara smiled, a rare, full expression that crinkled the corners of her eyes. Damn right it is, she clinked her water bottle against mine. Foundational work, boss. Driving back to the cottage, the city lights blurring past, the hum of the engine was a lullaby. The fear of Daniel's old haunts hadn't vanished, but it was muted, overshadowed by the tangible reality of the extractor in the bookstore basement, Clara's steady presence, Maya waiting with her day's drawings. The business wasn't just income, it was armor forged in the fire, proof that the chaos could be not just survived, but cleaned, ordered, made new. The water in my bucket had weight, yes, but it was the weight of purpose, not oppression. And purpose, I was learning, was the strongest foundation of all. The scent inside City Hall Annex 3 was a familiar cocktail of dust, old paper, and lemon-scented disinfectant, but beneath it lurked something sharper, metallic. Blood. Clara had been tactful, biohazard protocols might be needed. The incident had been a disgruntled citizen's protest turned violent in the property records office. Daniel's old kingdom. Dawn painted the high, grimy windows gray as we signed in. The security guard, a weary man named Ray, scanned our contractor badges. 3rd floor, East Wing. Place is a damn mess. Watch for glass. He handed us keycards, his gaze lingering a fraction too long on my name. Right, a name that likely echoed in these halls. I met his eyes steadily. We'll handle it. The elevator ride was silent, the hum loud in the confined space. Clara hefted her biohazard kit. Stick to protocol. Gloves, masks, goggles. Bag everything non-porous. Her calm was a rock. It's just matter, Olivia. Organic and inorganic. We sort it, clean it, restore the balance. The 3rd floor corridor stretched long and deserted, emergency lights casting deep shadows. The violence was localized to one office suite, but the tension hung thick in the air. The door to property records stood ajar, crime scene tape crisscrossing the frame like a grotesque decoration. Inside, chaos reigned. Overturned filing cabinets spewed paper, dark, dried stains marred the linoleum near a shattered monitor, shards of glass glittered like malignant stars under our headlamps. The lingering coppery tang was unmistakable. Just matter. Clara's words became a mantra. We moved with practiced efficiency, setting up containment zones. The roar of our industrial HEPA vacuums drowned out the unsettling quiet, sucking up glass, plaster dust, and the smaller debris. I focused on the physical, the weight of the vacuum, the vibration in my hands, the satisfying disappearance of grit under the powerful suction. We were reclaiming order, molecule by molecule. Mid-morning, voices echoed down the corridor. Low, urgent, lawyers. My spine stiffened instinctively before I forced it to relax. Just matter. Just space. Miles Donovan emerged from an adjacent conference room, flanked by a junior associate carrying a bulging briefcase. He looked diminished, expensive suit impeccable, but his face was drawn, the usual polished arrogance replaced by a brittle tension. He froze when he saw us, his gaze locking onto me kneeling near the doorway, carefully bagging shards of glass with biotongs. Shock, then a flicker of raw, undiluted hatred flashed in his eyes before being ruthlessly banked. "Ms. Wright," he said, his voice unnaturally smooth, devoid of its usual oily charm. An unexpected venue. I rose, setting down the tongs, my biohazard gloves stark yellow against the grime. "Mr. Donovan, we're under contract." My voice was level, professional. The vacuum's roar from inside the office where Clara worked provided a dissonant soundtrack. His eyes swept the taped doorway, the biohazard bags, my uniform. A muscle ticked in his jaw. "Yes?" Cleaning up the mess? The double entendre hung heavy. He took a step closer, lowering his voice, though his associate pretended sudden intense interest in his phone. "You must be enjoying this. Seeing the empire crumble, scrubbing the floors where he walked." The old fear tried to coil, the memory of his veiled threats. But the scent of citrus cleaner and the solid grip of the biotongs anchored me. I looked around, not at the mess, but at the space itself. The high ceilings, the worn marble floors, the banks of dusty windows. It's a building, Mr. Donovan. Marble, glass, paperwork. It holds echoes, not empires. Our job is to clear the debris so people can work again. I met his gaze squarely. That's all. He flinched, almost imperceptibly. My indifference, my utter lack of gloating or fear, was a weapon he hadn't anticipated. His carefully constructed narrative, where he was still the powerful player and I the vengeful victim, crumbled against the mundane reality of a cleaner in a hazmat suit. "Debris," he repeated, the word tasting sour. He glanced at the bloodstained Clara was meticulously treating with enzymatic cleaner. "Some debris leaves permanent stains." "Some do," I acknowledged, picking up the tongs again. but the space remains. We clean what we can. The rest becomes part of its history, not its definition. I turned back to my work, the movement deliberate, final. If you'll excuse me, we have a schedule. I didn't look back. I heard him stand there for a few more seconds, the silence thick with his impotent fury and unraveling control. Then, crisp footsteps retreated down the marble hall. Clara emerged from the office, pulling off her goggles. Trouble? Just an echo, I said, placing the last shard in the red biohazard bag and sealing it with a sharp zip. Fainter than I remembered. We worked through the day. The enzymatic cleaner worked its magic, breaking down the organic stains until only a faint shadow remained on the linoleum. We righted furniture, swept, mopped, disinfected every surface until the air smelled only of sharp, clean citrus and ozone. The shattered monitor was replaced by facilities. By late afternoon, the property records office stood empty, sterile, waiting. The violence was erased, the space reclaimed. Ready for new people, new work, new, hopefully less toxic, history. As we packed our gear, Ray reappeared. He surveyed the clean space, whistling low. Damn, looks better than before the damn riot. You folks work miracles? Clara snorted. Science and sweat, Ray. Mostly sweat. He handed me the final sign-off sheet. Heard Donovan was sniffing around earlier. Didn't give you grief, did he? I signed the form, the pen steady. Just passing through. Like the rest of the ghosts. Stepping out into the cool evening air felt like shedding a skin. The imposing facade of the annex looked less like a monument to Daniel's past power and more like just another building needing occasional, thorough maintenance. Clara bumped my shoulder with hers. Echo handled? Handled, I confirmed. Not with confrontation, but with the quiet, undeniable power of doing the job well. Of moving forward while the past rattled its chains ineffectually behind me. The weight of the extractor, the smell of clean floors, the silent approval of a security guard, these were the currencies of my new realm. And they were infinitely more solid than the crumbling empire of lies we'd just scrubbed clean. The marble halls held echoes, yes, but the future was built on clean floors and steady hands. Sunlight, warm and forgiving, dappled through the leaves of the sprawling oak in the community garden. The air hummed with bees and the distant laughter of children. Maya knelt beside a raised bed, her small hands patting dark soil around the base of a fledgling tomato plant with fierce concentration. Her tongue poked out the corner of her mouth, a gesture so reminiscent of her mother it stole my breath for a second. Beside her, Mr. Hopp sat propped against a watering can, observing. This was our Saturday ritual now. Therapy sessions happened on Tuesdays in a quiet office smelling of lavender and patience, unpacking the fear, the instability Daniel had woven into Maya's young life. But Saturdays? Saturdays were for dirt, sunlight, and things that grew. Dr. Evans had suggested it. Grounding, she called it. Literally. Think it's deep enough, Aunt Liv? Maya asked, brushing a smudge of earth from her cheek. I crouched beside her, checking the stem. Perfect. See how the soil hugs it. That's support. Now it can focus on reaching for the sun. The metaphor wasn't lost on me. Support, stability, letting roots settle. A shadow fell across the bed. Well now, that's a fine beefsteak you've got there, young lady. The voice was warm gravel. We looked up to see an elderly woman with a wide-brimmed straw hat, her face a roadmap of smile lines, holding a tray of vibrant seedlings. Needs room to breathe, though. Give it at least this much space. She held her gnarled hands about 2 feet apart. Name's Margaret. Plot 14. Zucchinis are my pride and joy. Mostly my despair, if the squirrels have their way. Maya giggled. Squirrels ate our sunflowers last year. Rascals, Margaret declared, setting her tray down. Butterfly bush next to the tomatoes helps. We are differed. She winked at Maya. Trade you a tip for a promise to water mine next week? Old bones don't bend like they used to. Maya's eyes widened. Really? I can? She looked at me, seeking permission. Margaret, this is Maya and I'm Olivia, I said, standing, wiping my hands on my jeans. And watering duty sounds like a fair trade for expert advice. Margaret's keen eyes, sharp as trowels behind her spectacles, swept over us. Maya's earnestness, my own tentative openness. Olivia, right? The reclamation lady? News traveled. even in soil and sunshine. Environmental reclamation services, yes, I confirmed, bracing for the usual mix of curiosity and pity. Cleaned up after that mess at the old Patterson building, didn't you? Margaret nodded approvingly. Heard it was a horror show. Mold like you wouldn't believe. Folks said you got it smelling like a lemon grove. Good work. There was no probing about Daniel, no loaded sympathy. Just professional respect from one who understood the value of restoring order. It was a balm. We spent the next hour companionably. Margaret showed Maya how to pinch off the first flowers of the zucchini to encourage stronger vines, sacrifice a few soldiers for the army. While I transplanted basil seedlings into another bed, their pungent scent releasing under my fingers. The sun warmed my back, the chatter of Maya and Margaret, about squirrels, school, the merits of marigolds versus nasturtiums, a gentle soundtrack. It wasn't deep friendship yet, but it was connection. Uncomplicated. Rooted in the present moment and shared dirt. Later, sitting on a weathered bench sharing the thermos of lemonade Clara had packed, Maya grew quiet, tracing patterns in the soil on her knees. Aunt Liv? Jessica at school? She said her mom said Uncle Daniel was a monster? And that I lived with a monster. Her voice was small, the earlier sunshine dimmed in her eyes. The lemonade turned tart in my mouth. Dr. Evans had warned about this, the world's echoes reaching Maya. I set the thermos down slowly. What do you think, Maya? She fiddled with Mr. Hops's ear. He yelled a lot. And he made you sad. Really sad. She looked up, her gaze clear and heartbreakingly mature. But he wasn't a monster all the time. He took me for ice cream that one time, and he fixed my bike chain. The complexity, the ambivalence. She remembered the ice cream, not the calculated charm. The bike chain, not the manipulation. Her truth was messy, human. Not a monster, but a broken man who did monstrous things. You're right, I said gently, putting an arm around her. Soil-dusted shoulders leaned into me. People are complicated, Sweet Pea. Sometimes they do bad things, even really bad things, but that doesn't mean every single moment was bad. It's okay to remember the ice cream and still know what he did was wrong. It's okay to feel mixed up about it. She was silent for a long moment, watching a ladybug traverse a blade of grass. Mostly, I feel sad. Sad that he broke things. Sad that he's gone to that place. Me too, I whispered, the admission raw but necessary. Sadness was safer than hatred, or fertile ground. But look what we're building, Maya. Right here. I gestured at the garden plots, vibrant with life. We're planting good things. In good soil. Margaret approached, holding out 2 fat, promising zucchini seedlings. For your plot, Maya. Paying it forward for the watering. Her eyes, wise and kind, held mine for a beat. She'd likely overheard. Gardens teach patience, she said, more to me than Maya. Things grow in their own time. Even after the storm. Maya took the seedlings, cradling them carefully. Thanks, Margaret. As we walked home later, Maya chattering about where to plant the zucchinis, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of peach and lavender, I felt the quiet strength of the garden lingering. It wasn't a fortress against the past, but a living testament to the present. We were planting. We were growing. We were learning to hold both the sadness and the sunlight, the memory of ice cream and the reality of brokenness, in the same tender hands that tended the soil. The roots were going down. Slowly, steadily, in good soil. Rain lashed against the office windows of environmental reclamation services, turning the city into a watercolor smear of gray and neon. Inside, warmth hummed. The dryer's tumbling uniforms in the back, Clara's steady typing, the scent of Clara's infamous black coffee mingling with the citrus cleaner we used on the office floors. Maya sat curled on the small sofa we'd salvaged, engrossed in a graphic novel, Mr. Hops tucked beside her. The ordinary symphony of our reclaimed life. The news played softly on the small screen mounted near Clara's desk, background noise to invoices and supply orders. Then, the anchor's tone shifted, sharpening with somber gravity. And, in the federal corruption trial that has gripped the city, closing arguments concluded today in the case against disgraced attorney Daniel Wright. My pen stilled on the quote I was drafting for a dental office flood. Maya's head lifted slightly from her book, a subtle tension tightening her shoulders. Clara's typing stopped. No one spoke. The anchor continued, footage cutting to the courthouse steps swarmed by umbrellas and cameras. Prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence over the past 6 weeks, detailing Wright's alleged orchestration of a complex web of fraud through shell corporations, including Legacy Holdings and Metro Property Solutions. Testimony from former associates, including his ex-law partner Miles Donovan under a plea agreement, painted a picture of systematic embezzlement, witness intimidation, and deliberate neglect leading to tenant injuries. A brief clip flashed, Donovan, looking gaunt and aged, speaking earnestly to the jury, gesturing towards charts. The defense maintained Wright was a victim of overzealous prosecution and the self-serving testimony of co-conspirators like Donovan, arguing his actions were standard, if aggressive, legal practice. Another clip, Daniel entering court, flanked by new, stone-faced lawyers. He wore a suit that hung slightly loose, his posture rigid, the familiar arrogance replaced by a hollow defiance. His eyes, briefly meeting the camera, held a flicker of something raw. Panic, perhaps, or the dawning horror of walls closing in. Gone was the man who'd screamed at cameras. This was a ghost haunting his own trial. Key to the prosecution's RICO case were medical records obtained by the defense detailing Wright's diagnosed narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial tendencies, introduced not to excuse, but to establish pattern, motive, and the capacity for the alleged calculated deceit. Maya shifted, pulling her knees up to her chest. I moved without thinking, sitting beside her on the sofa, putting an arm around her. She leaned into me, her gaze fixed on the screen, not on Daniel's image, but on the raindrops streaking the courthouse windows behind the reporter. The jury is expected to begin deliberations tomorrow. If convicted on all RICO predicates, Daniel Wright faces a mandatory minimum of 25 years in federal prison. The segment ended, cutting back to the anchor discussing the weather. The silence in our office stretched, filled only by the drumming rain and the distant thump of the dryers. Clara slowly turned her chair, her expression unreadable. 25 years minimum, she stated, not a question. Minimum, I echoed, the word tasting heavy, final. It wasn't joy I felt. Not relief, exactly. It was the slamming shut of a vault door on a toxic past, an irrevocable containment. Maya stirred against me. Is that a long time? Very long, sweet pea, I said softly, tightening my arm. Longer than you've been alive. She absorbed this, her small face serious. Will he be sad in that place? The question, innocent and devastating. Probably, I answered honestly. Prison is a sad place. But it's where people go when they break the rules badly. To keep others safe. I didn't say to keep us safe, but she understood. Like timeout, she murmured, tracing the stitching on Mr. Hopps's ear. But for grown-ups, forever timeout. A simplicity that cut through the legal complexity. Yes, like a very long timeout. Clara stood, stretching. Coffee's fresh. Anyone need a warm-up before we tackle Dr. Chen's waiting room? Her voice was deliberately normal, grounding us back in the tangible present. The coffee, the job waiting, the rain needing gutters cleared. I looked at Maya. Hot chocolate? A small smile touched her lips. With marshmallows. Obviously. As Clara busied herself at the small kitchenette, Maya snuggled closer. Aunt Liv? Yeah? Can we plant the blueberry bushes tomorrow? Like Margaret showed us? The future. Not the trial, not the verdict looming, not the ghost in the ill-fitting suit. Blueberry bushes. Growth. Patience. Sweetness yet to come. Absolutely, I said, kissing the top of her head. Rain or shine. Later, driving home through the downpour, the city lights reflecting on wet asphalt like scattered stars, the weight of the day settled differently. The trial wasn't over, but its shadow felt less consuming. Daniel was no longer a specter haunting our daily choices. He was a man facing the inexorable machinery of justice he'd once manipulated. His fate was out of my hands. Out of Donovan's hands. It rested with 12 strangers and the cold weight of evidence we'd helped unearth. I glanced at Maya in the rearview mirror. She was humming softly, watching the raindrops race down her window. Safe, unburdened by the gavel's impending fall. Her world was homework, Mr. Hops, blueberry bushes, and the steady rhythm of a life rebuilt. The fear, The hunted feeling, the need to look over my shoulder, it had ebbed slowly, replaced by the solid rhythm of work, the quiet strength of Clara's friendship, and the fierce, simple love for the child beside me. Daniel's final act, the trial, the potential decades behind bars, wasn't a victory lap for us. It was simply an ending. The distant echo of a gavel closing a chapter written in betrayal and pain, allowing the next page to be filled with quieter, cleaner words. Invoices, planting schedules, bedtime stories, and the hopeful promise of blueberries. The storm hadn't just passed, the floodwaters had fully receded, leaving fertile ground, and we were finally, truly, planting in peace. Golden October sunlight streamed through the open bay doors of the new warehouse, painting dust motes dancing in the warm air. The scent was familiar, citrus cleaner, fresh paint, and the earthy tang of drying clay from Maya's latest pottery project on the corner desk we designated her studio. The rhythmic swish-thump of the industrial washer and Clara's off-key humming blended with the city's distant murmur. Environmental reclamation services had outgrown the clapboard cottage office. Delivery for the reclamation queens. Margaret's voice boomed as she maneuvered a hand truck stacked with bulging cloth bags through the doorway. Her straw hat was askew, cheeks flushed. Compost delivery, premium grade, courtesy of the community garden's champion zucchini harvest. Maya, now 9 and perpetually smudged with clay or paint, abandoned her wheel and darted over. Margaret, did the pumpkins win? Against the squirrels? Barely, Margaret chuckled, patting a bag. But we saved you the biggest. For carving, business good, Olivia? I wiped my hands on a rag, surveying the space. 2 full crews prepping gear for afternoon jobs, a school gym deep clean, a boutique post-renovation sparkle. The new sign above the bay doors gleamed, Wright and Petrova Environmental Reclamation. Clara's name added, partnership formalized 6 months prior. Can't complain, Margaret. Keeping busy. Good, good. The city needs folks who know how to clean up proper messes. She winked, a knowing glint in her eye that held no pity, only respect. Maya, help an old lady unload this gold? As Maya enthusiastically grabbed a bag, Clara emerged from the office nook, tablet in hand. Confirmed. The Patterson Building re-up. Yearly deep clean contract. Signed. She grinned, a rare, full expression. Told them only the best scrubbers get repeat business. The Patterson job, our first major contract a year ago. A circle closed, not with a bang, but with a steady stream of work orders and trust earned bucket by bucket. Later, after Margaret left with promises of pumpkin carving and the crews dispatched, the warehouse settled into a peaceful hum. Clara tackled paperwork. I sorted newly delivered microfiber pads. Maya, back at her wheel, coaxed a lump of clay into a lopsided mug. Sunlight pooled on the polished concrete floor. A year since the verdict, guilty on all major RICO counts. 32 years. The news had come quietly while we prepped for a library asbestos cleanup. Clara had simply handed me a coffee. It's done. No fanfare. Just a heavy door, locking shut, far away. Donovan had vanished into witness protection, a footnote. Sarah was rumored to be teaching art therapy abroad. Ghosts laid to rest. The peace wasn't the absence of memory. Sometimes, the sharp scent of cedar cologne on a client would make my breath catch. Sometimes, Maya would have a nightmare, whispering about angry voices. But the sharp edges had softened, woven into the fabric of our lives without defining it. Therapy continued for both of us. Tools, not crutches. The door chime pinged. A man in a crisp delivery uniform held a long, flat box. Olivia Wright, speaking. Special delivery. Requires signature. The box was unmarked. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, lay a framed watercolor, not a masterpiece, but vibrant and alive. A detailed depiction of our old community garden plot, towering sunflowers, fat tomatoes, a butterfly bush teeming with life, and a small figure, recognizably Maya, carefully watering zucchinis. In the corner, a simple inscription, good soil, good growth, M. Margaret. Tears pricked, unexpected and warm. Not of sadness, but of profound gratitude for the quiet anchors we'd found. Look, Aunt Liv, Maya breathed, clay forgotten, tracing the painted sunflowers. It's our garden, and that's me. Clara peered over, smiling. Margaret's got hidden talents. Needs a place of honor. We hung it opposite Maya's clay creations, a splash of color and memory on the warehouse wall. A testament to roots taking hold. As dusk painted the sky in fiery hues, we locked up. The drive to our new apartment, bigger, sunlit, chosen together, was filled with Maya's chatter about Halloween costumes. Clara debated the merits of biodegradable confetti for a potential New Year's office party gig. Ordinary, precious. Standing on the balcony later, a mug of tea warming my hands, I watched the city lights blink on. The warehouse district lay quiet below, our bay doors dark. No frantic energy, no hunted glances. Just the steady rhythm of work, rest, and the quiet hum of a life rebuilt, piece by clean piece. Frank's postcard was tucked in my wallet, faded now. Plant your garden. We had. It wasn't perfect, but it was fertile. It was ours. The quiet season wasn't an ending, it was the deep, satisfying breath after hard work, the sunlight on thriving leaves, the promise of blueberries yet to ripen. The war was a memory. The debris cleared. Now we simply lived. Clean. Grounded, quietly, fiercely content. The light, hard-won and true, felt like home.